Let's go for it! I like the dark stuff. Give me the dark stuff. I like the dark stuff. Give me the dark stuff.
KISS, the mega decibel band who's credited with bringing outrageous glitter to rock and roll more than 10 years ago, just blasted off on a 5-month tour.
Hey there, everybody, it's me, your buddy Dave, the host here at the Dark Stuff channel on YouTube. Thanks a lot for checking out the new video. In today's video, it's a special one. We're taking a deep dive into my ancient history and taking a trip back to 1986 at a time when I met KISS for the first time. It was on the Asylum tour, January 24th, 1986 in Omaha. I did a lot of research for this one, and by research, I mean rooting around in my parents' basement, finding all of the necessary, most of all the necessary photos and everything that I could do to make this video as good as possible. So longtime viewers of the channel understand that KISS is my favorite band, though they're hardly the band that I talk about the most on the channel. I do want to take a second here to point out, since you're already here, that I do have a number of other KISS related videos, and I have a playlist featuring all of them, including my review of the End of the Road tour, my best 5 worst 5 albums of their catalog, my deep dive discussion of KISS in the 80s, and others, and I'll link to the playlist below, just so you understand that. Make sure you check out those videos too. And while we're on the subject of other videos and the Asylum era, former KISS guitarist Bruce Kulick, who was the guitar player at the time of this video in this era, made his own retrospective video on the 35th anniversary of the Asylum tour. I'm going to link to that also. It's a super cool video with some exclusive stuff that he found. So let me set the stage here real quickly. So my obsession with KISS probably really came into focus about 1983, and that's when the Lick It Up album was out. I remember seeing them all over MTV. I had seen I Love It Loud on USA, the show called Night Flight that used to be on, and an interview with KISS, and I was very familiar with KISS. But I'd say my fandom went up a notch around the Lick It Up era. KISS had a big resurgence in popularity around that time. The media was giving them another chance because they took the makeup off. Radio was even giving them a shot. I remember hearing the song Lick It Up on local radio, which was an anomaly back then because KISS was not on the radio hardly at all. The follow-up album to that, Animalize, was a huge success, platinum album. They did an MTV concert, which used to be the big deal. If you were a music nerd, you stayed at home Saturday night, and at I think it was 10:30 or 11 o'clock Central Time, my time, they would air a full-length concert from a band, and they had KISS from the Animalize tour. That later became the Animalize Live VHS video, which was a platinum video. I don't know exactly what that entails, but it was a platinum video nevertheless. In 1985, the band released the album Asylum. Okay, it followed up the hugely successful Animalize, and it too was a successful record. I wasn't able to see KISS on the Animalize tour because they didn't play Omaha on that tour. In December '84, they were in Lincoln, Nebraska. Lincoln, Nebraska is only, 45 minutes away. However, when you're 13 and you don't drive, that may as well have been Europe because I couldn't see it. So when the Asylum tour rolled around, I was super effing excited about going to this show. I didn't even fathom the idea that I could be going backstage. As I mentioned, my obsession really started in about '83, and by the time of 1985, I was deep in the throes of my KISS addiction, and I started my own fanzine, and it was this one here called KISS Rocks the World. This was my one of the editions, okay? There's the Asylum ad on the back of it. So, show you a couple of these. Okay. Now, just a heads up on this. This was 1985, and nobody had a computer at their house. There were no such things as scanners. There wasn't the internet. None of that stuff. If you wanted to make something like this, you had to do it like this, okay? It's cut and paste. So you take, you type it out, and then you have to cut it into squares, and you have to stick it on there with glue. You glue the photos down. Here's another page. Right, here's the black and white photo, and then you undercut, and there's the color photos, right? Because the magazine was in black and white. So I was like a super nerd, and I lucked out because one of my mom's best friends did ad sales for Z92, which was the rock station in Omaha at the time. They still are really, but the big rock station at the time, and they were somehow tied in with this Kiss show. And my mom asked her friend, could you see if there's any way that I could meet Kiss? So she took one of my fanzines to the program director. The program director contacted Kiss's management. Turns out it was Chris Lent, or C.K. Lent, which super Kiss fans know was the guy who was their touring accountant and was worked with them for many years. Wrote an awesome book on Kiss called Kiss and Sell, which is the absolute best insider's book on the music industry that I have ever read, bar none. Okay, moving on. So Chris Lent approved it, got us the passes. My friend and I, Matt, we were both just beyond excited because we'd never met anybody cool, nobody famous at this point. Okay, so we got down to the arena, Omaha Civic. I was still 14 at this time, maybe about 3 weeks before my 15th birthday, and my friend that I went with, my same age, probably about 3 weeks younger than me. So we were two 14-year-olds. We got dropped off at the Civic. We went to the will call, which again, we had no idea what we were doing with that. Got our backstage passes, got to go into the back. Now, it was when W.A.S.P, who was the opening act, was going on, so we didn't get to see W.A.S.P, which I was disappointed by, but I was okay with because I would much rather have met Kiss than seen W.A.S.P. The show itself was running about an hour late because the barricade up at the front of the stage was broken, and they had to get thousands of people to step back so they could fix it. This was the days of festival seating, or GA, in the 80s and 70s and 80s, and it was first come, first serve. I mean, you line up hours in advance, and when they open the door at like 5 o'clock, everybody rushes to the front of the stage to get their best spot. It's very egalitarian in a way because all the tickets cost the same amount. The closeness that you have is just how early you get there and how fast you can run. So it's a little bit more fair than the system now, but whatever. I'm much more comfortable with the system we have now, just FYI. So we went backstage, and there were these like tables, and we sit down, and slowly the guys start coming out. First it was Gene, and then it was Bruce, and then it was Eric. Paul never really came all the way out. He did kind of peek out from his dressing room, and as soon as he stuck his head out, he was still wearing a blue robe. Like, fans just, zoomed in on him. And so then he started signing some autographs and stuff. He wasn't posing for pictures with anybody, but he was signing autographs for people. I chatted mostly with Gene and with Eric. Bruce Kulick was brand new at the time. He was very, very nice, but honestly, he was the fourth guitar player in Kiss in the previous 4 years, right? So if you look back at their previous 4 records, Creatures of the Night had a bunch of different guitar players, but Ace was featured on the front cover. Lick It Up was Vinnie Vincent. Animalize was Mark St. John, and now Asylum had Bruce Kulick. So although I really liked Bruce's playing, and I thought Asylum was actually better than Animalize as a record, mostly because of the guitar playing, I didn't know how long Bruce was even going to be there. You know what I mean? Like, they were cycling through guys. So it was cool because he was there for more than a decade. But at the time, he was so new, it was like, well, here today, gone later today. You just didn't know. In this particular version of the fanzine, I recounted the conversations that I had with Gene and Eric and stuff, because I was 14 at the time. I'm 51 now, so it's a little hard to remember in detail. But what he did point out was that Gene came over to me, and I showed him this Gene Simmons for President button, and I gave him one. I don't know if that's focusing or not, but I'll maybe try to get a picture of it. And we talked about it, and we chatted it up. We talked about a number of different things. I gave him some copies of the fanzine. He looked at them, liked it, And again, my stuff was so rudimentary. I mean, imagine a 14-year-old today even making something. Not that a 14-year-old today would make a print zine, but it was so primitive. And I used to have to go with my mom to her office at night when they had photocopy machines, and I would make photocopies of all the stuff so that I could, that was my printing at the time. So I got to take a picture with Gene. I got to take a picture with Eric. We got to see Eric in his street clothes, and then later he came out in his colorful Asylum clothes, which they did have some goofy outfits on that Asylum tour. You know what I mean? Like the Asylum album as an album, looking back, is actually much better than I think people give it credit for, especially at the time. But the outfits and stuff were a little bit silly. I'm gonna state the obvious, okay? So I was able to see the Asylum tour again about 6 weeks later in Des Moines, Iowa. And by the way, that's Des Moines, not Des Moines, for those of you who have the new Kiss Off the Soundboard in '77 record and know what I'm talking about. W.A.S.P wasn't the opener for that one. It was King Cobra, and somehow I finagled my way backstage, okay? Like, I went with this older friend of mine who was a Kiss fan that I met through trading Kiss videos. He drove us out to Des Moines. We walk in the arena. King Cobra is already playing. And again, we didn't have anything arranged. We just bought a ticket, walked in. I go right to the side of the stage, and I see Gene Simmons and Eric Carr are sitting there talking to people. Now, there was a barricade, and I had to get somehow past that, but I somehow got their attention, Gene's attention, and he waved me in. I was like, okay. Now, both him and Eric Carr claim they recognized me from 6 weeks before. I think they were just being nice, because I don't really think they did. They meet tons of people every day, but whatever. Maybe they did. So I got to talk to Gene again. He signed my Creatures of the Night, the reissue cover with the non-makeup cover. I had him sign that in a ballpoint pen, kind of weak. That's the only thing I had. Got to talk to Eric again. He also claimed he remembered me from before. And then they went and played the show. You know, looking back, what really surprised me about the tour, and this show in particular, was the set list. You know, I saw Kiss a lot in the 80s. I saw them with Vinny. I saw them with Bruce. I saw them, well, that would be those would be my options. So I saw them a lot. And what Kiss always used to do in the 80s when they had a new record out is play 3-4 songs off the new record. They certainly did on the Animalize Live video, where they played at least 4 or 5 songs off Animalize. But this was the Asylum tour, and the only songs they played were All Night, which I'm sorry is just cringe, and Tears Are Falling. Great song. That was the big single off that record. But that was it. They only played 1 song off Animalize. That was Heaven's on Fire. Well, that was the previous record before, which was huge. They did 3 off Lick It Up, 3 off Creatures, and only 4 songs from the 70s. That was Detroit Rock City, Cold Gin, Love Gun, and Rock and Roll All Night to close out the show. So sort of a surprise. At the time, again, I didn't know what I was missing, so I thought it was fantastic. I loved every minute of it. Some of the nights on that tour, they were also doing Won't Get Fooled Again by The Who. Not that particular night, though. In Omaha, I didn't see that. I don't remember if they did it in Des Moines or not. Here's a little bit of Asylum merch. There's a pin from that era. So, you know, just in conclusion for this video, I would just say that all of the guys were super, super nice. Even Paul, who I only got to interact with very briefly, he signed my Asylum tour program and said hi really quickly, and, you know, that was it. I had most interaction with Gene and Eric, and, you know, Gene was very, very cool to me. I mean, say what you want about Gene, and I know he has this sort of arrogant persona that he puts off, and it was like that back in the 80s too. I was such a fanboy at this point, I wasn't really noticing. But he could have been a total dick to me, and I probably still would have been like, oh, Gene, you know, whatever. And he wasn't. He took a time to actually talk to some 14-year-old kid. He wasn't talking to some groupie. He wasn't talking to someone in the media or whatever. He was talking to me, and I definitely appreciated it. Same goes with Eric Carr. He was super, super nice and so friendly about everything. Bruce was friendly too, but again, my conversation with him was very limited, and same with Paul, so I didn't get as much time to talk about him. For those who will inevitably ask, no, I don't really have any extra copies of this magazine. You know, it's nothing that you can't get anywhere else. Again, back then I didn't understand the idea of copyright or anything. I just used to take photos from like Circus magazine and Hit Parader and put them in my stuff. I mean, I didn't understand how that worked. So it was funny at the time. I'm surprised anybody ever subscribed. If you were one of my subscribers, honestly, that I would like to hear about in a comment section. Honestly, I would love to hear from you. Okay, so that'll wrap it up. I hope you dug this video. Thanks a lot for checking it out. Take care. Bye-bye.